Hello and welcome back to our podcast. Again, my name is Nate Marble, and I'm here interviewing Jen Hedrick, our clinical director and associate executive director here at Discovery Ranch South here in southern Utah. Glad to be with you again. Hi.
Thanks. Hello.
Yeah. As always, please remember that this podcast is not a replacement for therapy. Please always seek a mental health professional for your individual situation if you need it. And so what we're going to be talking about in this episode, we're going to provide information for parents on discussing common challenges and also try to offer practical strategies for self-care and navigating the teenage years with a daughter or a kid with ASD or neurodivergence. So first of all, parents, I don't think we take care of ourselves anyway, right? So that's one thing that we're going to be talking about. But what are some of the most, as a parent and people listening to this podcast, what are some of the most common challenges that you see that parents are facing when they have a child with neurodivergence or ASD?
Yeah. I mean, I think you said it first. Parents don't take care of themselves in general. So I think some of the challenges come for parents before diagnosis when they don't really know maybe why their child is doing some of the behaviors that they're doing. And then once diagnosis occurs, at least it helps them kind of make sense of it, of what is happening. But ultimately, I think it's, they have to decide, like, how are they going to educate themselves so that they know how to help. So it's like parents educating themselves, but then also making sure that they have the energy, because parenting in general takes energy, right? The best parenting takes time and flexibility. And if we don't have the energy to sort of show up, then we're not going to be of any use. And it's sort of like that old adage of putting your breathing mask on in a plane situation first before you can put someone else's on to help them. So yeah, I think it's ultimately like, also I think that I'm going to say this, parents often become parents with expectations attached to that. Right? Like, why do I want to become a parent? I have these expectations. And then when my child sort of shows up in a way that I wasn't expecting, then I'm having to, adjust my own script as a parent. And so I think that's part of it too, is like learning to adjust the expectation around who your child is and what do they come into the world with, what do they come to the table with. And my hope is that ultimately parents' goal is to help a child navigate their world in the best way that they possibly can. And that doesn't necessarily mean being happy all the time, right? I often hear parents say, I just want my child to be happy. It's like, okay, and I hope you want them to be sad sometimes too, because that is how we're built. We're built to experience a range of emotions. And so with these kids who have, sort of the challenges that come along with neurodivergence and being on the autism spectrum, the goal would be to kind of going back, I've said this in the previous episodes, but going back to learning the basics first, right? 1 + 1 = 2. So that is the sensory experience. What's your child's sensory experience? What is their, how are they experiencing their emotions? What is their awareness levels? And then you can build onto the other things. So it's very basic. I'm not saying it's easy, but really that's where the parent support piece comes in, is like kind of slowing down, rolling back, and dealing with what's underneath all of the behavioral manifestations.
Well, that might be hard too, because it might be later on in the child's life when they actually realize that's happening. So they would have to really roll back everything that they've done to that point and be like, okay, I got to start at the basic.
Right.
So we're talking about parents taking care of their kids, but what about themselves?
Yeah.
What about the self-care aspect of that, and how do they avoid that burnout? Because that's a big thing to take on as a parent.
Yeah. So I think, what I teach, like if I think about my work, I'm teaching the parents the same things I'm teaching the kids. Parents often go into fix-it mode, which is right. I want my child to, not that I necessarily want you to fix my child, but I want you to fix my child to not have problems anymore, because I don't want them to have a bad experience, and then therefore I won't have a bad experience. But I think one of the biggest things I see with parents is not being able to co-regulate with their children, any child. And when we have kids on the autism spectrum or who are neurodivergent, right, they struggle more with emotional dysregulation, whether that being being hyper aroused, so too up, or sometimes too down as well, so depression and anxiety. But it's kind of like helping that parent stay within their own window of tolerance, which parents aren't the greatest at, right? They tend to get out of their window of tolerance, their nervous system gets dysregulated, and then that dysregulation basically perpetuates dysregulation in a kid. So taking care of themselves is learning those things for themselves, right? How can I show up and be regulated most of the time? Ultimately,
while supporting my kid, while I'm trying to teach this.
Yeah, exactly.
So are there groups that, like, I'm sure there's support groups and things out there that they can look up. Is there an easy way to find those? Yeah,
I mean, I think a basic, search, especially within local communities, to find. I think I personally like support groups the best. I've run a lot of parent support groups for parents who have kids in treatment, and just being able to connect with someone who has a shared experience is sometimes all a parent needs, right? To not feel alone in their experience, because they do feel alone in it. They're like, no one else has these problems that I have trying to help my child. But in reality, there's a lot of people out there that do. And so I think being able to ultimately commiserate, right, with others, even if it's misery loves company, it's pretty validating. And I think that's what a lot of parents need, is validation in their experience that this is hard. They're not necessarily going to get, here's the way to fix it, but just being able to feel less alone, feel validated in the struggle is going to help.
So what about encouraging communication between the parent and the kid themselves? Is there a good way to encourage that between the two, and not only encourage it but enforce it, have them enforce that thought of, I need to have this communication with my kid?
I mean, I think it's parenting 101 in general is you've got to have open communication with your kids, right? And also understand that as they age, their sort of developmental task is to differentiate and kind of detach a little bit from parents. And so finding ways to connect is going to be really important. And so I think that ultimately isn't different with a kid who's neurodivergent or on the autism spectrum. It's really about, if we're talking about teenagers, we're just talking about that general developmental time when we have to stay connected. It's kind of don't let go of your kids kind of thing. Stay connected to your kids. I think also because these kids are looking for sort of answers to the social world. I mentioned this in a previous episode, but really as a parent, I have to really be a model of, right? Modeling sort of social communication, modeling what I want to see in my child as well, because they do mimic things. They are going to mimic our behaviors. They are going to, I'm thinking about a kid I worked with right now where I was like, why? It was a kid on the spectrum, and it's like, why this kid it just felt interesting that meanness was a go-to for them. And then I met the parent and I was like, oh, okay, this makes sense, right? But she didn't see it as they would just kind of talk about people in a way that was kind of judgmental, right? And thought that this just stays in our home where it's not going to go out there. But the reality is that was a script for this kid. So they took it outside but basically was blowing up social interactions. So I think that's the other piece. We don't have to be perfect, but we definitely have to model, what we want to see in our kids.
And that goes even into the self-care of it. Like you said,
exactly.
Or the groups that they're going to see you going to groups. So
right.
Maybe that's something that they should try.
Yeah.
And all of that.
Well, and parents often get into that thing of oh, it's selfish for me to do this. And it's absolutely not, right? If you have to if you don't have the energy to take care of other people if you don't take care of yourself. Right. And then your kid sees that too. My parent is taking time for themselves because that's what they need to do in order to show up bigger and better for me.
And now that's something that I need to do in my life as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there resources that you can recommend to parents to build like the resilience or manage their stress when going through this?
Well, I'm pretty biased, but I would say therapy. I mean, and that doesn't have to look like, therapy is like, oh, I'm going to go talk about my feelings, kind of thing. And it's like, well, yeah, like have support, right? So, I mean, a therapist or a life coach or somebody that can listen, right? Like be kind of an objective listener that hopefully isn't going to place judgment on you based on the things that you're struggling with as a parent. So I think like, or, just anyone, but talking about it seems really important. I mean, taking care of your physical self, obviously too, whatever that means for people, getting out in the sun, exercising, all the things that we all know to be helpful in our mental health. But I think that take a back seat sometimes when we're in crisis mode, because when we're helping our child manage something hard, as a parent, we go into crisis mode. And so that's sometimes hard to take care of yourself in. So
are there tricks to recognize that trigger point to the point, because I've found in my own life, like I get to the point where I don't even recognize that I need a break or I need to go do something different. I need to go be a part of a group or sit down and record, because I record sometimes,
Yeah.
Are there points where the parent should be looking, or when something happens, they know that it's time to do their own thing and go take care of themselves, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's different for everyone. Yeah. I know for me, it's when I feel like, this is going to sound weird, but it's when I feel like it's not me that's responding anymore. It's almost like it's like I'm kind of in this crisis aspect of things where it's like if I'm snapping at people and I'm like, oh, that's not me, right? Like when it just kind of become uncharacteristically myself, I think that's a sign. I think I'm going to throw in this little Brene Brown thing that I learned a long time ago that really helps me too, in terms of just like in general as a parent, but as a human being, which is like to use this acronym called HALT, which is, it's very simple, but it's like when don't feel like myself, you ask yourself, am I hungry? Am I angry? Am I lonely? Or am I tired? And if any of those things are true, you probably need to take care of them. And I think tired becomes the one that for a lot of parents is the thing, that they're tired in some way, physically tired, mentally tired. And so that's kind of a sign that like, if you can answer the yes there, then you probably need to make a shift or a change.
Hungry, angry, lonely, and tired?
Correct.
I'm going to write that down.
Okay.
Thanks. Moving into parents advocating for their kids in different scenarios, is there a good way? I mean, it's going to be different for every person, right? But how do parents advocate for their kids in a school setting? Yeah. And going in that realm? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would like to say it's as simple as like just advocate for your kid, but I think that it is more challenging than that. But I think that like at a deeper level, when we're doing that, I'm hoping that we're also teaching the kid that, right? That it's like we're doing it as it's a partnership between the parent and the kid to like, again, back to that modeling. This kid they're observationally learning like how to advocate for themselves in the way that the parent does. So I think that it is, just do it in a way that is healthy and assertive communication with your school, with, any organization out there that your child's a part of. And don't give up. I think a lot of times there's roadblocks that occur and then parents might give up, but I think that it's sometimes you gotta maybe fight a little bit harder, and find the resources that are either within the school or outside of the school. But ultimately, I mean, it's the school's responsibility, right, to help kids succeed, whatever that looks like. I'm not, going to define success, but I just mean like at least be able to have a healthy school experience. And if they're not, then I think the parents need to partner again with the school, right? To get the resources that their child needs.
So we talked a little bit, backing up to a previous question we had, you talked a little bit about therapy for parents and being able to go to therapists. Are there certain types of therapies or therapists that you would, certain expertises that they would have that you would look for, especially when you have a kid that has ASD or is neurodivergent? What would you look for in a therapist? I guess is what I'm asking.
I think it's kind of, there's a couple things. One is I hope that therapist does have an understanding of neurodivergent kids. Otherwise, I think what you find, and I've seen this where, the therapist will kind of go into sort of a behavioral modification mode with the parents, say, well, you just need to get them to do this, and this is how you do it. And yeah, that works. Like behavioral modification can work, can teach kids, sort of more what not to do. That's sort of some of the problems with that, is like it teaches kids what not to do, but doesn't necessarily teach them what to do. So I think they really need to have it. I don't think they have to be an expert in, neurodivergence, but at least have a general understanding of kind of the underpinnings, I guess, of the child's behavior. And then ultimately, if it's the parent's therapist, then they should just be looking for someone who can help them build, their own skills, because I think a lot of parents probably do have their own deficits around, or don't have the skill set to actually take care of themselves in a healthy way. I'll plug EMDR for a second, even though it's like a trauma-based, reprocessing therapy. It's actually really good for resource building, which is like increasing our ability to manage and tolerate distress. That can be a huge focus of that type of therapy through the nervous system. And so I would say that that's a great one for parents if they find an EMDR therapist that can do that with them.
So are there certain parents, because you've worked here for a long time, are there certain parents that stick out in your mind that have either done really well with working with their neurodivergent kid or not? And are there stories? They've got to have stories about them.
Yeah. I think it comes back to that basic, like that expectation that a parent has of their child, right? And like, whether it be for their own selfish purposes, I'll say, which is like, I want my child to be like this, or for maybe sort of less selfish, which is, I want my child to have a good experience in the world. But ultimately, I think if that parent doesn't engage in a way that is learning that we're not trying to change, right, like the basic structure of their child's brain, and so basically change them, that we're really just trying to help that kid utilize their strengths, become their best self, and then learn to navigate a world that hasn't been totally set up for them. So I think that the parents that I think do the best are the ones that are willing to make that shift and willing to really accept, who their kid is. That's a big part of it. Yeah. Well,
and I was actually talking to a parent, our last parent, Sam, and we had a men's group, a father's group, and he was saying he sets it aside every single day for 15 minutes that he goes into his garage and just works on a car.
Yeah.
But those are the things that we don't think about. I've yet to meet a parent that's like, I can take care of myself. I'm very, I don't have burnout and I have self-care all the time.
Yeah.
So that's not easy. Well, anything else you want to say about self-care for parents or helping parents navigate that, because it's new?
I'm going to make a joke and say people that talk a lot about self-care are the people that don't do it very well for themselves, which I would be included in that. But I think it's just, don't try to like take it all on at once, because sometimes I think it's like, it's like a New Year's resolution of like, oh, now I have to take care of myself, so I have to do all of these things. I think if you can just do one, just try one thing that's different, that is nurturing to self, I think you're on the right track, right? And then try to incorporate more and more.
Right. It's like that dad taking 15 minutes because you've never done it before. Just spending time on it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you again.
Yeah.
Jen Hedrick, our clinical director here at Discovery Ranch South, and the associate executive director as well. Yeah. So that's our podcast for today. Next time we will be talking about the therapeutic support options and what to consider when you're looking at residential treatment as an option for you and for your kids. So we'll see you next time.